Don't touch her. Lone Barker's voice sliced through the calm morning like broken glass. Nancy Ward froze mid-motion, yellow gloves glinting against the sunlight flooding through the tall windows of the Jefferson mansion. The marble floor gleamed beneath her knees, and baby Olivia sat giggling beside her, until Lone's sharp cry shattered the peace. The 25-year-old maid turned just in time to see Lone sweep across the hall, all black silk and cold fury. Without warning, Lone snatched Olivia's tiny arm, yanking her upright. The baby's cry rose, piercing and raw. "Ma'am, please." Nancy's voice cracked. "You're hurting her, let me. Don't you dare tell me what to do with my own child." Lone hissed. "You think because he lets you breathe the same air in this house, you get to play mother?" Nancy's stomach twisted. She lifted her hands in surrender. "I was only—" "Shut up, you filthy maid." Lone's words struck like whips. "Know your place before I make you regret every second you've spent here." Olivia's wailing filled the grand foyer. Lone's heel caught the corner of the baby's blanket, nearly tripping her as she shoved Nancy backward. A silver rattle clattered across the marble, rolling until it hit the leg of a grand piano with a hollow chime. "Please, ma'am, she's just a baby," Nancy said, voice trembling but firm. "She doesn't understand, exactly," Lone sneered. "And neither do you." She bent toward Olivia again, her hand trembling with rage. The heavy front door opened, and a voice cut through the chaos. "What's going on here?" Robert Jefferson stood framed in the doorway, tall and immaculate, a bouquet of orange roses in one hand, frozen mid-step. The petals quivered as his eyes darted between the crying baby, the furious fiancée, and the kneeling maid. Lone's face changed instantly, fear blooming where cruelty had lived seconds before. She rushed to him, clutching her arm. "Robert! Thank God you're home." She lost control. She was screaming at Olivia, shaking her. "Look what she did." Nancy shook her head, tears streaking her face. "Sir, please. That's not enough." Robert's voice thundered through the marble hall. "Step away from my daughter." "Sir, please, listen, I said enough, Nancy." His tone cracked like lightning. "You're done here. Pack your things." Lone buried her face into his shoulder, sobbing softly. Olivia's cries continued to echo, soft, helpless, unending. Nancy stood, her heart hammering in her chest. She could feel the burn of injustice in every breath. She looked at Robert, then at the trembling baby. "Don't leave her alone with her again," she whispered. "Please." No one spoke. The maid turned and walked out, her reflection fading from the polished floor until only the baby's cries remained. Robert watched the door close, his jaw tightening. He believed he had defended his family, but what he didn't know was that the truth had just walked out of his house. And it would come back to destroy everything he thought he knew. The mansion fell silent. The echo of Nancy's final words, "Don't leave her alone with her again," hung in the marble air like smoke that refused to fade. Lone stood trembling in the middle of the foyer, tears streaking her perfect makeup, a performance of fragility that could have fooled anyone. Anyone but the child. "Shoo, darling," Robert murmured, scooping Olivia into his arms. "It's all right now." But the baby's sobs only deepened. Each time he tried to hand her to Lone, Olivia wailed, her small body twisting away. Lone's face hardened before she remembered to look wounded. "She's frightened after what that woman did," she whispered, voice cracking. "You saw how she grabbed her." Robert nodded stiffly, wanting to believe it, needing to. He told himself he had done what any father should, protect his child, protect his home. But as he looked at Lone cradling Olivia awkwardly, something uneasy flickered beneath his ribs. Outside, gray clouds gathered over Charleston. A few miles away, Nancy Ward sat at a rusted bus stop, her small suitcase at her feet. She held a worn notebook in her lap and wrote slowly, "I lost another job for doing what's right. Maybe that's what right costs." The wind tugged at the pages, but she didn't stop. Somewhere deep inside, she still heard the baby's cry. Back in the mansion, Lone sat on the couch, her face buried in her hands. "I can't believe she would hurt Olivia," she whispered, her shoulders shaking. Robert sat beside her, resting a hand on her back. "It's over now," he said quietly. "We'll move on." But Linda, the housekeeper, stood in the doorway of the nursery, unseen, her eyes following every movement. She had heard the screaming earlier. She had seen the fear in Nancy's eyes. And she had noticed the faint, reddish marks on Olivia's wrist before anyone else. That night, Robert stood beside the crib, brushing his fingers over the tiny bruises. His chest tightened. It must have been the maid, he told himself. It had to be. But Olivia whimpered in her sleep when Lone entered the room, and in that soft, broken sound, the first crack in his certainty began to form. Days bled together in uneasy silence. The Jefferson mansion, once a place of light and polished laughter, now felt like it carried its own weight. Every sound lingered too long, every step echoed as though the walls themselves were listening. Lone Barker ruled the house with her thin, trembling rage. One moment she smiled sweetly, the next she was shouting at the staff. She dismissed the gardener for trimming the roses too unevenly, accused Linda of whispering lies behind her back, and cancelled 2 of Robert's business dinners with a single text. "We don't need strangers in our home," she snapped when he questioned her. "Not after what happened." Robert said nothing. He buried himself in meetings, in spreadsheets, in anything that would silence the memory of his daughter's scream. But it never truly left him. Even during calls with investors, his mind drifted back to Olivia's frightened eyes, her trembling lip, the way she had recoiled from Lone's touch. Guilt gnawed at him quietly, a splinter beneath the surface of his confidence. Miles away, in a narrow downtown building that smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee, Nancy Ward tried to rebuild a life. She rented a small room above a bakery, its window cracked and curtains threadbare. Her days were filled with quiet work, scrubbing tiles, folding sheets, sweeping floors that would never belong to her. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she saw Olivia's tear-streaked face. Each night, before sleeping, she whispered a prayer, "Keep her safe, Lord. Just keep her safe." Back at the mansion, Lone stood before a mirror, applying lipstick before an investor's dinner she insisted on hosting. Her reflection smiled back, composed, charming, the perfect fiancée. But behind her, Linda caught the faint twitch in her jaw, the subtle tension that cracked through her grace. The evening unfolded smoothly until Olivia's cry pierced through the baby monitor on the table. Lone's smile froze. "Excuse me," she murmured, pushing back her chair. Her heels clicked across the marble as she climbed the stairs, the monitor still echoing faint sobs. Minutes later, the crying stopped. From the hallway, Linda paused outside the nursery door. Behind it, muffled shouting, Lone's voice, sharp and venomous, cut through the quiet. Linda's hand hovered near the knob, but she couldn't move. The mansion was full of echoes. And some truths, she feared, were buried too deep to survive them. The morning began like any other, Robert Jefferson buried in calls, Lone gliding through the house with a practiced smile, the silence between them growing thicker by the day. The only new presence was Miles, his longtime tech assistant, a quiet man with quick fingers and a nervous habit of adjusting his glasses. Miles had come to upgrade the mansion's security network, syncing it with Robert's company servers. He moved methodically from room to room until he reached the nursery. "Did you ever want this one connected too?" he asked, pointing at the small black lens nestled high in the corner. Robert looked up, frowning. "What camera?" Miles blinked. "The built-in monitor, sir. It's part of the home security package we installed 6 months ago. Records continuously, uploads to your private cloud. Didn't you?" Robert's expression hardened. "How far back does it go?" "Continuously," Miles repeated, tapping at his tablet. "Every hour since installation. You could pull any date, any time." Something cold slid down Robert's spine. The memory of that morning, the crying, the shouting, Nancy's tear-streaked face, rushed back with suffocating force. He dismissed Miles early, his voice tight. "That'll be all for today." When night fell and Lone finally drifted to sleep beside him, Robert sat alone in the glow of his laptop. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioner and the soft click of his mouse as he opened the cloud folder labeled Jefferson_nursery feed. Thousands of time-stamped clips blinked back at him. He scrolled to the day he had fired Nancy. His heart thudded painfully. For a long moment he couldn't move, then he clicked play. The footage flickered to life. There was Lone, elegant and furious, bending toward the crib. Olivia's cry filled the room. The camera caught everything, Lone jerking the baby's arm, screaming words Robert could barely stand to hear, and Nancy stepping in between them, shielding the child with her own body. The truth unfolded in merciless clarity. Every plea, every insult, every second of it. Robert's breath hitched. The screen blurred through his tears. He saw himself in that moment again, roses in hand, anger in his voice, believing a lie. The laptop shook in his grip as he whispered into the dark, "Dear God, what have I done?" Robert Jefferson didn't sleep that night. When dawn filtered through the blinds, he was still seated at his desk, the laptop closed but the truth burning behind his eyes. By breakfast, the house felt different, colder, quieter. The man who once met every morning with calm precision now moved like a shadow through his own home. He avoided Lone's gaze. Her laughter, once sweet and disarming, grated like glass. When she reached for his hand at the dining table, he pulled away under the pretense of checking his phone. At night, instead of joining her in bed, he stayed in his office, the glow from his computer casting long, haunted lines across his face. Lone noticed. And it terrified her. By the third day, she was pacing the halls, fury disguised as confusion. "You've been distant, Robert," she said at dinner, her voice trembling with manufactured concern. "Is something wrong?" He didn't look up from his plate. "Everything's fine." That single phrase, flat, detached, shattered her composure. The mask slipped for an instant, revealing the storm beneath. Later, she found Linda in the pantry, folding linens. "You saw something, didn't you?" Lone hissed. "Don't play dumb. If you breathe a word of your suspicions, I'll make sure you never work in the city again." Linda's hands trembled as she nodded, eyes downcast. That night, once the house was quiet, she pulled out her old cell phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in weeks. When Nancy Ward answered, her voice was cautious. "It's Linda," the older woman whispered. "He knows, dear. I think he's seen it." Nancy sat frozen on the edge of her bed, the hum of city traffic fading into silence. "Are you sure?" "I've seen his face. He knows." Nancy's breath caught. "Maybe," she murmured, tears stinging her eyes, "maybe truth really does find its way home." Back at the mansion, Lone entered Robert's office without knocking. He was watching the footage again, the dim light flickering across his face. She crossed the room, voice low and dangerous. "You'll ruin us both if you tell anyone." Robert finally turned to her, his voice calm but cutting as steel. "No, Lone," he said. "You ruined yourself." The marble foyer was quiet again, too quiet. The same place that had once echoed with Olivia's cries now felt like a stage waiting for its final act. Robert stood at the base of the staircase, phone in hand, the screen still glowing with the truth he could no longer unsee. Lone descended the stairs slowly, her silk robe whispering across the marble. "You've barely spoken to me in days," she said, her voice trembling with the effort to sound composed. "If this is about that Maid again." Robert cut her off with a small motion of his hand. "I want you to see something." He pressed play. The footage began to roll, Lone's shrill voice echoing through the room, Olivia's desperate wails, Nancy's pleas for her to stop. Every sound, every gesture, played back in cruel, vivid detail. Lone froze, her face draining of color. You've been spying on me?" Robert's gaze didn't waver. "I installed that camera to protect my daughter. I just never thought it would protect her from you." She took a step closer, her composure cracking. "You can't prove anything," she whispered. "You don't know what was really happening." "I don't need to prove it," he said quietly, the weight of grief and anger coiling beneath his calm. "I saw everything." For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Lone lunged, her manicured hand snatching for the phone. Robert stepped back, the device steady in his grasp. "Don't," he warned, voice low and final. Her mask shattered. "You'll regret this, Robert," she hissed. "You'll lose everything, your reputation, your company, your perfect little life. You think anyone will believe her over me?" He straightened, eyes sharp as glass. "Then I'll lose it honestly." For a moment, the only sound was Olivia's faint laughter drifting from upstairs, innocent, unaware. Lone turned away, shaking with rage. She grabbed her purse, her voice breaking into a curse as she stormed toward the door. The echo of her heels on marble was the same rhythm as that morning weeks ago, but now it was stripped of triumph. Robert watched her leave, his chest heavy, his daughter's safety his only certainty. This time, the silence that followed felt like justice. The rain came down in a soft, steady drizzle, washing the streets of Charleston in silver. Robert Jefferson parked his car outside a small diner tucked between a laundromat and a flower shop. Its neon sign flickered weakly, Rosie's Place, a far cry from the gleaming marble halls he was used to. Through the window, he saw her. Nancy Ward, hair pulled back, wearing a plain apron, balancing 2 coffee cups with quiet grace. She moved with the same calm strength she had shown that day, the day he had destroyed her life. When she spotted him standing in the doorway, the tray in her hand stilled. Her eyes, once gentle, hardened with disbelief. "Mr. Jefferson," she said carefully, her voice steady but cold. "We don't serve charity here." "I didn't come for forgiveness," he said softly. "I came to thank you." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Robert reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He slid it across the counter. Inside was a photograph, Olivia, sitting in her crib, smiling wide and free of fear. Nancy's breath caught. Her hands trembled as she picked up the photo. "She's all right?" "She's safe," Robert said, his voice thick. "Because of you." Nancy blinked rapidly, the edges of the picture blurring. "I thought, after everything, I'd never see her again." "I made a mistake," Robert admitted, his gaze dropping. "The worst one of my life. I believed a lie and punished the only person who told me the truth." He looked up, eyes raw. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I know." Nancy set the photo down gently. The diner hummed with low chatter around them, the world moving on as though their small moment meant nothing, but for both, it meant everything. Robert hesitated, then spoke again. I want you to come back, not as staff, not as help. As Olivia's guardian. As someone she can look up to. And, as a partner. I'm starting a foundation in her name. I can't do it without you. Nancy looked at him for a long time, her voice quiet but sure. I'll come, she said. Not for you, Mr. Jefferson. For her. Outside, the rain eased. And for the first time in months, the weight on Robert's chest began to lift. By dawn, the world knew. Every major news outlet carried the same headline: Billionaire Robert Jefferson exposes fiancée's abuse, releases damning footage. Within hours, Lone Barker's name, once synonymous with grace and luxury, became a storm of scandal. Sponsors dropped her, tabloids devoured her fall, and morning talk shows replayed the footage Robert had released, the moment truth finally spoke louder than charm. The world saw it all: Lone's fury, Olivia's cry, Nancy's trembling voice pleading for mercy. There was no room for denial. The woman who had built her fame on beauty and benevolence was now infamous for cruelty. Reporters swarmed the gates of the Jefferson estate, their cameras flashing beneath the gray Charleston sky. Robert stood before them, calm and composed, his suit immaculate but his expression solemn. When asked for comment, he offered only one statement. Power means nothing if it protects cruelty. I failed to see the truth once, but I won't fail again. No more questions. No rehearsed lines. He turned and walked back into his home, closing the great doors behind him. Inside, the mansion felt different, not empty, but alive again. The echo of fear had been replaced by something gentler. From upstairs came the sound of laughter, tiny, bright, unguarded. In the nursery, Nancy Ward stood beside the crib, humming softly as baby Olivia reached for her necklace, gurgling with joy. The morning light filtered through the curtains, washing everything in a soft gold glow. Nancy's heart ached with quiet relief. She had no need for thanks or recognition. The only reward she wanted was the sound of the child's laughter filling the house that once held so much pain. Robert appeared in the doorway, silent for a moment, watching them. His voice came low, rough with emotion. Sometimes the right thing costs everything. Nancy looked up, a small, knowing smile curving her lips. And sometimes, she said, it gives everything back. He nodded, eyes glistening, the truth of her words settling deep. For the first time in months, the Jefferson mansion was filled not with whispers or regret, but with peace. And outside, as the world argued and analyzed, inside that quiet nursery, justice finally breathed. 6 months later, Charleston woke to a day washed in light. The magnolia trees swayed in a soft coastal breeze, their petals drifting like quiet blessings over the stone steps of the city's historic civic hall. Inside, chandeliers shimmered above a gathered crowd, business leaders, journalists, and families, drawn together for the launch of the Olivia Trust Foundation. At the center of it all stood Robert Jefferson, the once private billionaire who had become a reluctant public symbol of accountability and change. He looked composed in his dark suit, but his expression carried something softer now, a humility that came only after the breaking and rebuilding of a man's soul. Beside him, Nancy Ward stood holding baby Olivia, who babbled cheerfully and tugged at the edge of her dress. The sight drew gentle smiles from the crowd. For many, she was just a quiet woman in a pale blue dress. Few knew she was the reason the foundation existed at all. A reporter raised a hand. Mr. Jefferson, she asked, what inspired the Olivia Trust? Robert paused, the question settling like a weight he didn't mind carrying. He turned toward Nancy, his gaze steady, filled with gratitude. One woman did the unthinkable, he said. His voice echoed softly through the hall. She stood between innocence and cruelty, and she saved us. Applause rippled through the room, slow and reverent, building into something full and alive. Cameras flashed, but Nancy didn't look up. Her eyes were on Olivia, who reached for her hand and wrapped her tiny fingers around one of Nancy's. The gesture was small, but it carried the weight of forgiveness, of healing. After the ceremony, the three of them stepped outside into the warm afternoon. The magnolias swayed overhead, sunlight slipping through the clouds in golden streams. For the first time, Robert's laughter joined Nancy's, blending with Olivia's delighted squeals. The mansion they would return to no longer carried echoes of fear or guilt. It was filled with music, gentle words, and the steady heartbeat of a home reborn. The truth, once buried under marble floors and lies, now lived freely in the open air, breathing through every smile, every breeze, every sound of laughter that filled the Charleston sky. Thank you for watching till the end. Click subscribe and let me know the lessons you learned in the comment below, and turn on the notification bell because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it.